Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, running late because of traffic. It's the Brent and Malcolm Show. I'm Brent Hazard. As always, I have honored to have Wilford Beal. Mr. Beal, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for asking.
And also, while we get everything set up, I'm joined by Socrates Garrett, the owner of We Believe Studio.
How did you get held up by traffic? We only have 2 traffic lights.
We have more than 2 traffic lights. Probably the reason he doesn't know he's only provided 2 through Socrates Garrett Enterprises.
I have a special lane for me.
Oh, do they?
That's right. That's right. You know, they have the lane that you have when you go to urban cities that have population where you can only travel 2 or more in a car, and they have the express lane.
So they have a jackass lane in Mississippi? I didn't know they had that. Do they have that in Detroit, jackass lane?
They're called HOV, high occupancy vehicle lane.
There you go. There you go.
Anyway.
There you go. This lane's for you, Bob.
Let me get straight into this nationally. We had a little banking crisis since we met. Mr. Bill, your thoughts, your observations. Should we be bailing the banks out? Should we be... Right now, deposits are guaranteed up to $250,000, but the federal government came out and said we're insuring everything, every deposit. And for those who do not know, the Silicon Valley Bank had a lot of tech investors, and they exceeded the $250,000. I know Roku, who we believe has a channel with, they came out and said, I do believe we have $568 million in that bank. So the federal government said, hey, y'all stop worrying. But the closest it got here, they froze trading on Regions, reported through some national media that following Monday, a couple weeks ago. Your thoughts on what was the cause, in your opinion, and your thoughts, should we be bailing banks out?
We should be bailing the banks out to the point that they were incorporated under the federal statutes. Anything beyond that, then those depositors must be responsible. However, it's a foreign thought of mine that the bank's failure may have some residuals of the Bitcoin issues.
Well, I mean, I do believe now. Actually, Bitcoin has gone up since the bank issues, but yes, I think with all the crypto issues and that's tied into the high interest rates. I was watching some documentaries or some videos about it, and they have said, like in the 80s, we increased interest rates at a very rapid pace. Right now, we're increasing them at the fastest pace in the history of the country. That caused the investment in bonds to be a bad investment in the short term, because no one anticipated the interest rates going up that high. Socrates, your opinion on should we bail out the banks? And I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Well, first of all, I'd like to offer a correction. I think when you say Regions Bank, you create a lot of concern in the local community, because we have...
I mean Regions Financial Bank. They froze trading on
Not the Regions.
Yes, here.
I think it's regional.
No.
I think you need to check that, because I don't want to have a run on Regions Bank here in Jackson.
Would you lose a lot of money, Socrates?
Well, more than I began with, that's for sure. And so I want to make absolutely certain of that, because in my information says that it's regional bank.
And what, I'll pull it up, Sunshine. I'll pull it up. Do we have a little wager on it, maybe for charity?
No.
Maybe for charity?
Charity begins at home. That's what I'm working for. Home.
So that could be a lot of things.
While you're looking that up. And the other thing is that on the interest rates, I think the interest rates increase were suspended. And so it's not going to increase anymore, because...
wait, the Fed's supposed to increase.
No, my understanding is that they are going to suspend the increases, and they're going to try and deal with inflation in a different way, because no one can afford to buy any homes anymore with, there's a tremendous pent-up market for housing in America, and you cannot do that.
Hang on. Yeah. Now, this is Newsweek.
Go ahead.
Newsweek?
Go ahead, Newsweek.
Does that say Regional Financial Corporation Commerce stock?
It did, but where they headquartered, that might help you out a little bit.
That is the people who own Regions Bank. That's in Florida. That's them, partner, because I got a little money in there too, and it was not widely. Now everything's fine now. Yeah, the government's come in and stabilized it, but you didn't even know your own bank was a little concerned.
No, I thought Regions was headquartered in Birmingham or Chicago.
It's not Chicago, it's a Southern Regional Bank. But Jackson Jambalaya was the only one that reported, it was reported nationally that they suspended, because this happened on a Friday, and then you had the Signature Bank went down, and then that Monday, they froze trading because people were panicking.
Right.
And it doesn't say anything that Regions is bad. I've been with them for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is this panic out there. Now, this is the first I'm hearing about the interest rates, but like I said, I was watching some day traders or some other bankers discuss this, and they basically said this is the Fed's issue. The Fed's trying to correct inflation in a way they've never done it this quick, and that they're trying to correct it. But also, as a society, we became accustomed to having our cake and eating it too. Low interest rates with a lot of money supply, with the government printing off a lot of money for COVID. Now, I understand, Paul Kruger from New York Times economist Princeton said, when you're falling out of a building, you don't try to be rational. But at some point, we've got to stop. Everything's not a crisis.
Well, it will be a crisis if you don't take care of these depositors. If, in fact, you allow the banking system to collapse, or if you allow the trust of Americans to be diminished because of the way it's being managed, then you will have a crisis. And so I think that the president and his team are exactly right, that you got to make everybody whole. Capitalism clearly is, buyers beware. I get that. But the banking system is so critically important to how capitalism works in America's trust until you cannot afford for it to collapse. Barack Obama didn't allow it to happen, and Biden shouldn't allow it to happen today.
But my issue is this. No one, and you said it, I think, Mr. Bill, no one's bailed, and you want to turn your phone off when we're on the air? I mean, I know this is your first time on the air. Someone's phone's beeping. It ain't over here. But it's okay, Detroit. You figure it out when you can. But the point is, no one bails us out when we have financial troubles. Now, I'm not talking about a collapse, because, for those who do not know, the reason we have the FDIC is because the banking system, 1 out of every 3 banks collapsed during the Great Depression, during the crash, the Wall Street crash. So they had to get some confidence in the insurance. I was shocked that basically Twitter this bank had $10 billion in assets. It wasn't like it was completely just destitute. But people will panic, and that we have not become more sophisticated with that panic. But 2, this is what people thought, who had a lot of money on hand, who had to put it somewhere. They went bonds, they went T-bills, they went either 2-year investments, 10-year investments, and then they sold them to cover up some of the tech companies not making deposits like they were used to doing. And next thing you know, we have a $10 billion bank being taken over. Some of this, the cryptocurrency, the bad banking strategies, not anticipating higher interest rates, it's just bad management. There's got to be some sort of recourse because capitalism without failure, and this is not my quote, I forgot who said it, capitalism without failure is religion without sin. It just doesn't work. Mr. Bill, your comment.
My comment, you're going to get everybody to join capitalism.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying is at some point, it's communist when the rich fail because they're too big to fail. It'll hurt our society. When I go broke, you got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You made some bad decisions. Right. Socrates.
I get that, but you're not an institution. You
depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah, I get that. And not many people are dependent upon you in the way you manage your financials. But when you are a banking institution, or when you are trading in the public on the stock exchange, remembering Black Monday, Americans get hurt. And we get hurt to the extent that suicide rates go up during that period of time. And a lot of families are just decimated. So we cannot allow that to happen as a country. Now, when you have a difficult time, then you ought to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or you just drop a 7 and you get started again. We allow you to do that. There is no debtor's prison for you. So the system is designed to succeed.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I want to say is, America at the creation gave you what the foundation would be, that they will save you. Now, saving in total, I have to question that, because bank leaders, just like business leaders, make bad decisions. So we cannot always fund the fallacies of leadership, but we fund the creation so that the country substantiates. And what the country guarantees you're not going to be broke. If you jump, you're just jumping because you don't have the surplus.
Let me tell you something. He done been on 10 shows with that intensive vocabulary, and that's the first damn thing you said that was smart. Welcome to the show, Mr. Bill. Damn, I thought you were like... But you made a very
get
good
used
point.
to it, Mr. Bill. He can't help himself.
You made a very good... you made a very good point. Now, but here's my problem, Socrates, because like you said, I'm not talking, and my issue with you, I'm not talking about a full collapse. Yes, if we did not stop those banks, I do believe we couldn't stop people going to buy toilet paper when it had nothing to do with COVID. We are still have a lot of animal in us. We are still have a lot of childish behaviors in us, where we panic and we oh, you're running, they don't run, it's a fire. Oh hell, let me get out of here. But what I'm saying also is, every now and then we need a purging, especially of bad business decisions. There's an in-between there where we can take over. Now, I don't think there's any criminal issues with this bank. I think, like you said, there was unprecedented interest rates, unprecedented cryptocurrency issues. Now, I think there's some criminal issues on the crypto side. But you never hear these bankers or these Wall Street people who cause these collapses, because everybody knows if it goes up, it's got to come down.
Well,
you never hear those people being prosecuted.
Well, I disagree with that. I mean, locally, we had Bernie Evers here in Mississippi that was prosecuted. And actually,
where was he prosecuted?
In Mississippi.
In Manhattan? No,
he was prosecuted in Manhattan, but the headquarters of the business...
it's WorldCom. What you're talking
was
about is
headquartered
WorldCom.
right here in Mississippi.
And what I'm saying is, but you'll never see that for Lehman Brothers. You never see that for any of that municipal derivative crap when they had emails saying, this is POS, piece of garbage. That's not what they stood for.
Yeah.
But then they knew it.
Well, I'm not certain that we haven't seen people punished for their behavior. I mean, the junk market.
They take away their $200 million bonus and they're stuck
and
with
there
their
are
four
some
houses.
criminal. There are some criminal charges brought about against that. Even the president has said that he wants to see the managers of these banks and institutions charged. He wants them to be punished for their behavior, and especially when the chairman of the bank sold $4.5 million worth of stock in the last
money, how that happened?
Yeah, I mean, so that kind of behavior, activity, he wants to punish them individually. And I understand that they said they will never work in banking again. So
that's not a punishment.
No.
That's not a, is that one? Who's going to hire you? Hey, the guy who's captained the Titanic will no longer drive a boat. Well, way to sacrifice there,
with
Captain.
local breads on both arms, they won't get back no more.
Yeah. Yes, I'll be a private investor. I mean, I want them to see them in parchment. I want them. Now, see, this is what kills me about our Republican DAs. That lock up Hillary, Hunter Biden, but you never hear a Republican DA say these banking, these Wall Street, these coke using, we need to get them in Kansas, we need to get them in Rankin County, because like you said, what ultimately is hurt is our 401ks.
Yeah.
And the biggest 401ks are the public officials. So, and let's be honest, I see the securities fraud cases, and I don't even know if this might be unfair to you and Mr. Beal. The AG's office used to handle securities fraud cases because we were the 40th, Mississippi was the 40th biggest retirement plan in the nation. California teachers was one, but because firemen, teachers, everybody was combined in Mississippi, we were at the top of the list. And a lot of them didn't want to sue. Jim Hood was suing. I pitched to the Hinds County DA, Robert Smith at the time, and Jim Hood, let's just prosecute them in Jackson. Let's just prosecute them in Jackson, and just one at a time, bring your Harvard silk stocking ass on down here and explain how you got, I mean, right now.
What do you have against Harvard, Brent? I mean, why do they have to be silk stocking asses?
Have you not seen,
I mean, what's
have you
up?
not seen,
What's up with,
have
what's
you
up
not
with
seen,
that?
is it Inside Bank, the 2010, there's a 2010 documentary about the mortgage crisis and derivative crisis. And I'll look it up during the break. We're about to take a break. But it's one of those things where when you saw these professors come in front of Congress and they speak in Princeton and Yale and Harvard and Stanford, what they don't tell you is the damn bank has bought 1 million books by Professor Johnson. And Professor Johnson saying, oh, these banks have done everything they could, or they ain't told you that Professor Johnson's on their speaking tour, and they're getting an extra $250,000, and their speaking tour happens to be in Paris and Hong Kong, and what I'm saying
That's
is,
the way this works, Brent.
exactly, and what I'm saying, I'm fine with that as long as it works for us, and
who is us?
Mississippi has to understand that you can want to live anywhere, you only from certain places. Am I right about that, Mr.
That's
Bill?
right.
And what I'm saying is, if we don't have our elected officials, Republican or Democrat, say, did you steal for some of my white and black teachers? Yeah. Come on down. Come on down in front of 12 of us.
Didn't we have a Republican state auditor that brought the charges against the people that embezzled the money at DHS?
Oh, Shad White. I love Shad White.
Okay, is he a Republican?
He's a Republican.
Okay, and so he brought these charges.
Yes.
Now, I assume that he had the assistance of the local Democratic DA,
Jody Owens. And look, I'm giving criticism for not indicting Brett Favre or Governor Bryant. Ted DiBiase just pled, not Ted, Brett DiBiase, Ted's son just pled guilty. Jody needs credit for that. Now, I think it was...
What role did Jody play?
Jody's playing a prominent role because the state auditor doesn't have prosecutorial powers. Now, whenever the feds are in charge, to be fair to any state officials take back seats to feds. But what I'm saying is Jody has his indictments. I believe... Go ahead.
Are you saying that the state auditor is not responsible for the indictments that have been given to the people in the DHS scandal?
He's responsible for the investigation.
That's it.
But all he can do with the investigation...
who's indicting these people?
Jody Owens.
Yeah.
A local Hinds County district attorney is indicting Brett Favre and...
Well, no one's indicted Brett Favre or Phil Bryant, but if you notice, they work together. If you plead in one, but right now the feds are leading it.
So Jody Owens is responsible for the indictments
In the state courts, Hinds County. But let me say this, and once again, this isn't a criticism of Jody. This criticism goes back to Ed Peters. The Hinds County DA is the most powerful position, in my opinion, in the state, because you can open a grand jury on Haley Barber's pardons. You can open a grand jury. Allegedly, Tate Reeves' wife's book got published with some DHS money. You can open, and you don't have to talk about grand juries. You can just subpoena you. You can subpoena me. You can subpoena, and then when people ask you, can't talk about that. Any corruption, beef plant, any corruption, WorldCom, you can get the Hinds because everything has to go through Jackson. But anyway, we're running out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, please remember my good friend and partner, Malcolm Johnson's not here tonight. He's out there campaigning. keep him in mind when we're talking about public corruption, when we're talking about being accountable. Malcolm has been accountable, either coming on this show and dealing with Mr. Bill and I, or has made his career where he's accountable. Keep him in mind for District 5 coming up on August 4th for your supervisor. But we're going to be right back with more of these comments and conversations.
Looking for the hottest content in the city of Jackson and surrounding areas? Check out WeBelieveDigital.com. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We Believe Digital Podcast is here for all your podcasting needs.
With so much going on day to day, we lose track of what's important. Sometimes we get lost, we lose ourselves, and we forget that our personal care is important. Self-care is checking in on our physical and mental health and making sure we are using and putting good things into our bodies. It's when we take time, real time, to connect ourselves back to a beautiful, healthier, happier you. Join me and an expert lineup of speakers on April 1st as we teach you the real meaning of self-care. This will be an empowering and enlightening time to help you get and stay in tune with yourself. Invite a friend, invest in yourself, and let's all learn the true meaning of self-care. You need it, you deserve it. I can't wait to see you transform from the inside out.
Welcome back to the Brent and Malcolm show. We were talking about Socrates. You could not believe I said a black Hinds County District Attorney is the most powerful man. Could be the most powerful man in the state.
I have not seen any evidence of that power. I know Jody Owens, and he's a fine person, but I don't see him waging that kind of power in this deep red state of Mississippi. So I think that the Lynn Fitch, the Attorney General in the state of Mississippi, is the number one prosecutor in the state of Mississippi, and she can call Jody Owens to the side and set him down anytime she chooses to.
Actually, no, because Robert, if you remember, Robert and Jim Hood got in a fight about that over whether some drug dealers got indicted or not. And one of the issues that came up is who gets priority jurisdiction. And I mean, to be fair to you and Mr. Bill, this gets into some legalese, insider baseball. But my point is, if Hinds County's coming back, if I'm Hinds County DA and and we'll use the Haley Barber pardons. Everyone was pardoning 80 people, 50 people, 60 people. Haley busted the record for 200. Jim Hood got involved, but he never impaneled a grand jury. Doesn't mean you're going to indict anybody. Doesn't mean you're going to arrest anybody. Said we're going to look at it. And with that grand jury comes subpoena power. And you start issuing subpoenas, and you say, come on down here, Phil Bryant, and talk to us. Or come down here, Uncle Haley, and talk to us about them pardons. Or anybody, let's bring 22 felons down here. Hey, man, anybody in your family give Uncle Haley anything? Or anybody in their family give any Hunter Biden deals? And you ask them this. And then you say, oh, you remember you under perjury. Don't lie now. You don't lie. Imagine the power if Jody Owens and Jody Owens invited Phil Bryant and Brett Favre down to the grand jury. Even if they took the Fifth Amendment and it's supposed to be sealed, just like we know supposedly Trump is supposed to get arrested this week, things get out. Me personally, I was down there filing a case about a month ago or 2 months ago. I don't know who they were with, but what happens is, if we're representing Brett Favre or we're representing Phil Bryant, there's a group of us, and there's only certain attorneys that will get that job. And you'll see them coming out. You're like, oh, it must be grand jury week. And you go, what case are they presenting? Little scuttlebutt, little birds talk, and the power of that, well, I'll cooperate. Because like I said, if they got all three of us and we're having to testify against him, I'm the first one rolling on Socrates. Let me tell you everything about Socrates Garrett. He's an ass. He's a narcissist.
Don't listen to him. He knows nothing about Socrates Garrett.
But let me just say, third person on yourself.
Let me say this to you.
No one knows anything about Socrates.
Let me say this to you.
Go ahead.
We've had a African American district attorney now for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Is it
And
20?
I can't recall.
Not one of them's done it.
I can't recall one of them having indicted any prominent, well-known white person in 20 years.
Never presented.
No, I disagree with that.
Oh, okay.
First name to come to mind, and you know, we can argue over power. Ben Allen was indicted and convicted. You know who Ben Allen is? Ben Allen, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Jackson, he was the last powerful Northeast Jackson city councilman. And he resigned or retired, and Quentin Whitwell took his place.
Yeah.
And he went to the Jackson Partners or something like that. It was a nonprofit to keep downtown partnership or partners.
Yeah.
And the downtown partners, all of a sudden there was some embezzling, but for the first time in history, the nonprofit said there was no embezzling, and the DA said, "Oh yes, it was." And Robert Gibbs was representing the nonprofit and said, no, it was just some bad accounting errors, but we've taken care of that internally. No, Ben Allen got convicted.
Well, he did, but now he was a city council person, and while Ben was a powerful person in some lights, but he was nowhere near Phil Bryant.
Oh no, he's nowhere near Phil Bryant right now. No, he's not here. Well, let's be fair. We don't have any facts.
No
the dirtiest
CEOs.
player in the game, Haley Barber's done anything.
I don't recall them indicting anybody on the Chris Epps scandal.
There was a white guy, McCory. I think McCory was a representative.
But anyway, I'm glad to learn that the DA has that much power. I do, okay. And I will be asking Jody. I will be asking Jody when I see him. You know, why is it that I don't feel that he is as powerful as you have described him to be here today?
Oh, look, and this is it. Well, let's turn it around a little bit, Mr. Bill. Bring you back in. Who's allegedly indicting or arresting Donald Trump this week? Are you familiar?
I'm not familiar with who's going to do it.
It's the Manhattan DA. Right. It's not the federal DA. It's the state DA, an African-American gentleman that Trump leaked it and tried to preempt it. And I think that's what Brett Favre's defamation suit was. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense. But what I'm saying is state power, sometimes when you're elected official, state DAs and Hinds County prosecutors, we figure it out on the way to the courthouse. We don't have the resources. We don't have the money. Sometimes we don't even have wiretaps. The indictments in state court in Mississippi are usually a paragraph that says Brent Hazard sold cocaine, and it quotes the statute, he violated da-da-da-da-da, and that's it. A federal indictment is usually like, I don't know, 42 pages, because they've been through your cell phone, they got your text, and I'll tell you why. No one cared how many cases I lost. No one really did. They wanted me to be aggressive. You are promoted in the federal system on how many losses you have or wins. And someone once told me, when a friend of mine was in the system, they said, if you're a 92% conviction rate, you might as well quit. That you're not getting any promotion. And I'll give you an example. God, I can't think of his name. The gentleman who was prosecuting a guy named Mike Watts. He spells it Mike McHale, but it's Michael Watts. I know Michael. He was the #1 donor of the Obama administration in 2012. Not of Mississippi, not of Texas, the #1 donor. And there was an issue where he was alleged to be forging Vietnamese fishermen's signatures on BP cases. He was indicted. They couldn't charge him in Texas because he was too powerful. They couldn't charge him in New Orleans. So John Dowdy, who was head of NBN, was a federal prosecutor, said, I'll do it, and they took him to Gulfport. Dowdy lost that case, went to NBN, couldn't stay in the federal system, got appointed head of NBN. Then there's an allegation that he was trying to fix his son's case. Last time anybody heard of Mr. Dowdy, he was an assistant prosecutor, assistant ADA in Lawrence County, Mississippi. You fall quick. So that what I'm saying is, Ed Peters didn't use it, but under the criminal system, anytime there's a statewide scandal, the Hinds County DA has jurisdiction of it with the Attorney General, with the feds.
Wow.
Let me say this, since we went into this deep dive, this is what you'll hear him say. I'm too busy doing criminal violent work. You know, I got too much to go on. Oh, this is what they tell me in the past.
Yeah.
This is how you get around that. You get your law schools involved. Right now, the New Orleans DA gets Morris Bart to review cases. You get people to do pro bono work, and you build your staff up, because you're going to war if you're taking on a Brent Favre or Phil Bryant or something like that.
I haven't seen one press conference that the DA had regarding the DHS scandal. I've seen
he had a press conference. No, I disagree with that.
I see Chad White in the news every day almost about the scandal. He is trying to make it clear that he doesn't have the power to indict, which I do not believe that's
No,
the
it's
case.
constitutional.
He has the power to influence the indictment beyond some meager position.
That's a different situation.
And so he is responsible for the indictment of these people on the DHS scandal more so than the DA is. I believe that now. I believe he says, Jody, you know, here's the situation. Here's my
No, he gives them the report. He gives them the report.
And here's my recommendation. Here's what I think you ought to do.
Now, let me go ahead and jump on your side. Shad White called Phil Bryant a whistleblower. That was 100% politics, and that's because, I don't know if you know this, Phil Bryant nominated Shad White as auditor. But Phil Bryant was not a whistleblower. But no, and I mean, once again, to be fair to Jody, when the feds come in, Jody I couldn't take over. When it's like when the FBI comes in, you can't sit there and say, this is our case, FBI, we're the federals. So once the feds come in, Jody doesn't have the ability. But no, Shad and Jody, now what was interesting, what you've not brought up, which no one's brought up, Shad didn't go to Lynn Fitch. Now, is that because Shad wanted all the credit or didn't trust Lynn Fitch? Because I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you know this, Mr. Bill. Do you know where the majority of Phil Bryant's staff went?
No.
Lynn Fitch. Because, I mean, as you know, there's only so many people in politics. And when you lose one campaign, you kind of have to find, this is my skill set. If I'm a county attorney or I represent, a public defender, you can't really go into private sector, especially in Mississippi. So you try to find the next candidate. And Phil Bryant was the answer. Well, you tell me this, Socrates. Hey, and this is no way, I'm asking you this because of your knowledge of these individuals. Was Phil Bryant in Haley Barbour's camp or not?
Yeah, he was in Haley's camp. Every Republican was in Haley's camp. Everybody follows the orders that are sent down by Haley Barbour in the Republican Party in Mississippi. So everybody is obedient foot soldiers. The answer is yes.
Okay, but when you say that, Lynn Fitch and Tate Reeves got into it over Lynn Fitch froze Impact because it was upside down. That's when you invest in, your kids are in third grade and you invest so much at a reduced rate for them to go to a public university, Jackson State, Alcorn State, Ole Miss. So Tate and Lynn fell out a little bit. That's when I became a fan of Lynn's. And then she's backed up on some prosecutions, so I've got mixed feelings about the current AG. And people forget that she was pro-life at one point and didn't really explain her switch. But with that said,
Influence.
You think?
Influence.
Political ambition, it's a horrible thing. So right now, do you think that Lynn Fitch is part of Haley's camp? Because Tate Reeves is, right? We all agree Tate Reeves, Mr. Bill. And the reason I'm not including you this, do you know a lot about this because you moved back recently?
No, I don't.
Okay. Is Tate Reeves, I would call Tate Reeves a puppet or Haley Barbour, fair or unfair?
As I said earlier, Republicans are in lockstep So they get their orders down from Haley Barbour, and everybody else marches accordingly. And that happens not only in Mississippi, that happens in several states, and that's why you see 9, 10, 11 states did not expand Medicaid, because they get their marching orders from the Republican Party. I'll remind you, on these votes that occurred in the Mississippi House of Representatives and the Senate against 1020, notorious bill, the party line, everybody voted along the party lines. And we see it in Washington, D.C. all the time. All Republicans vote in one direction, one way, and all Democrats vote in another. So
okay, let me stop you there. Why is that? What happened? Because you used to have people debate, sell their vote in a good way.
Because it's just like gangs in East LA. You know, it's colors. You know, we believe in our own. We believe in these principles, and we're going to fight anybody collectively that goes against the things that we want to see happen. It's just a gang. It's the same mentality that the Crips and the Bloods, the Republicans and the Democrats, and America put it that way. To the victor goes the spoils. When you win, you're supposed to win, and all of the spoils go to your side of the aisle, and everybody else suffers. Now, that doesn't hold true in the African-American community, because I'll give you an example of I worked extremely hard to get a local elected official, Mayor Tony Yarby, elected to mayor, but no spoils were available, because it just, African Americans don't stick together in that way in Democratic nor Republican venues.
Oh, no. See, now I would disagree with you there, but I want Mr. Bill's comment. And what my disagreement is, and you and I can come back, we got to take a break after I get Mr. Bill's point of view. Mississippians don't stick together because them Chicago Democrats and them Chicago African Americans stick together. They understand you eat, I eat. They understand, because let me go ahead and tell you this. I spent 17 years trying to make Mississippi, and this gets into some technical matters, the antitrust capital. I was going to put a new section at Ole Miss. I was going to have a little niche section of litigation. And these morons around here that were making $400, $500 an hour was like, well, we're against Brent. And I'm like, you're eating from the same table I am, Bubba. So that ain't a black thing. That's just a stupid thing, because like I said, as long as we all eat, we all good. Now we can fight amongst ourselves. Yeah. But you better make sure this side of the street eats.
Now you brought up Ole Miss. Now,
the
University of Ole Miss. And what about those Ole Miss Rebels? I've never pulled so hard. Now, I went to Alcorn. I believe in Jackson State. But when I was sitting there watching the Rebels play Stanford, every rebound, I was into it. I wanted Yo and the Rebels to win that game with everything that I had. And I am so proud of the way that they played in Stanford and took down that giant. It just sent shockwaves through the world.
And see, that's what I'm saying, and that's what I don't get. And I mean, obviously there's a racial history. And well, before we go there, let's be fair to Mr. Bill. Am I wrong, Mr. Bill? Growing up, when you had D's and R's, you had people, let's just say someone wants to build something in Alaska. I could give a rat's butt about what goes in Alaska. But if the right person comes to me and says Hinds County or Greenville, Mississippi is going to get $5 million in this bill, if you vote, I'd be like, man, I don't care what y'all build up there. Give me my $5 million. Whether I'm voting with a Republican, whether I'm voting with a Democrat, I'm doing best for what's for my people.
That's the way it's done.
But now, I agree with Socrates, everybody's afraid, oh, you voted with them, but it was for the benefit of Mississippi. I mean, let's be honest, people were criticizing Thad Cochran for not being a true Republican. They weren't criticizing when he was down there building houses for people who, wanted you to pull your bootstraps up until their house got wiped out by Katrina. They weren't criticizing all these federal courthouses he brought to Mississippi. They weren't criticizing all that federal agricultural money that he and Benny brought to Mississippi. They weren't but he's not one of us because he's not cutting back government. Well, how about cutting back your government grant? Where did we lose that negotiation power?
I don't know if we lost it, because when we go talk about transportation legislation, there are some on both sides that are going against it, and we would explain to them, like you said, well, this gonna put this in your district. Then they'll start taking another look at it. But they got the different, I guess, agenda items where they stay as a party. But there are different legislations where they're all over the place. Case in point, President Biden, as a Democrat, okay, he voted most of the time with Republicans.
We're going to come back, but I want to talk to you about Ole Miss basketball right after this break. But before we go on a break, please remember someone who reaches across the aisle to whites, blacks, Republicans, Democrats, Malcolm Johnson. Malcolm Johnson's running on to be your supervisor for District 5. Keep him in mind on August 8th. We'll be right back to follow up about Ole Miss women's basketball.
Yeah, great.
Do you have something to say? Do you want your voice heard? Join the We Believe Global lineup. Be the star of your own show. For more info, call 800-492-5186, option number 1, or visit online at webelieve.global. SGECOVIDsolutions.com is paving the way forward for a safer city government, delivering cutting-edge biosecurity and biosafety protocols developed internationally by top virologists and scientists using an all-natural cleaning solution, killing COVID-19 on contact like no other product on the international market. For more information, please call 1-800-281-9080 or visit us online at SGECOVIDsolutions.com. Let SGECOVIDsolutions.com provide innovative rapid facilities testing and world-class state-of-the-art biorisk safety protocols for all of your coronavirus needs. Call 1-800-281-9080 or visit us online at SGECOVIDsolutions.com.
It's the Brent and Malcolm Show. I'm Brent Hazard. Now, Socrates, you brought up Ole Miss women's basketball. Now, this is what, now you got to remember, Mr. Bill, I'm 50, born in 72, went to Ole Miss from 91 to 99.
That's a long time. I mean, why did it take you so long?
Accounting degree, law degree, jackass.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know.
Hey, whoa, wait. That was working now. And your boy didn't have a shirt on, okay? Your boy had to, he had to let the Ole Miss students see what hard work looked like. Okay, I had a good time. Yeah. I was what you would call what's the old saying?
Chiseled.
Oh no, I was yoked. But I mean, what I'm saying is, wasn't so much opportunity for social activities in Greenville.
I bet not.
In the farm. But anyway, when I was growing up, Ole Miss had the number 2 women's SEC program. And it was mostly by African American women and a coach named Van Chancellor. We could never beat Tennessee, Pat Summitt, they were winning national championships. Well, we were always number 2, and I always got to feel a lot of that came from Jackson, the Jackson female basketball players. And it was always a little frustrating for me as a fan that the men were not following, because I knew there was that natural talent here too. What was your perception? Is that a true perception? Do we have a lot of Jackson, the metro area women go to
tremendous amount of talent in the metropolitan area?
Well, were they going to the Ole Miss women's basketball program? Or back then?
No, we were going to HBCUs. But back that time, we would have loved to have been able to play Ole Miss in any sport, because we had the talent and we think we would have done well. I know that I went to Starkville to see Alcorn play Mississippi State in the first round, and we won by 2 points, and never got out of there. But that was a highlight of my basketball experience. But there's tremendous talent here, Brent, as you say, and that talent is now going to Ole Miss.
What is your perception when you see African Americans go to Ole Miss? Well,
first of all, I went to an HBCU. I think HBCUs have a lot to offer. I think that Deion Sanders came in here and proved what true leadership could do in a small town and at a university of 7,000 to 10,000 students. And so my perception is that African Americans, when they can, they ought to try and attend a HBCU. because you get leadership skills, which you're not going to get at Ole Miss and Mississippi State. And you get to be president of the student body. You get to be president of the drama departments. You get to be all of those things that bring about leadership skills. So I think they ought to go to HBCUs when you can. Now, when I see them go to Ole Miss, I'm rooting for them just as hard. I was so proud of them watching them against Stanford. I was even more proud that they had a black female coach.
Oh, she's tremendous.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Beal, you being from Mississippi but spending some time outside the state, what confuses me is there was such a struggle, and let's be honest, James Meredith, Ole Miss, and we talked about it last time. Yeah. And it seems like there was a struggle for African Americans to get one person in. And then it seemed like the state entirely, or the African American community entirely said, "Oh, we good, we're here." And what people don't understand, it's not the lectures are better at Harvard. It's not that the lessons are better at Princeton than Ole Miss or Jackson State. It's, hey, did you see that game the other day? Did you see Billy score 20? Now, I don't know if y'all saw this. Princeton went to the Sweet 16 and they cut to Princeton's campus and no one was doing anything. Everybody was studying. But going back to what people don't understand is they're not smarter than you at Harvard or Yale. I mean, they have a different work history than anybody in Mississippi or expectation, but it's the connections. And being last, I feel like we need to find more commonality and get everybody in the room, even if it's the fight. As long as we're eating on this side of the street, we gonna eat. It seems like we're good, that we're still stuck in being segregated. Mr. Beal, your thoughts and comments about the university system in Mississippi?
University system in Mississippi is great, and I agree.
Okay, stop right there. It's not great. Our best school's 116. That's not great that we have 100 schools that beat us across the nation.
Okay.
But it's great to the extent the Mississippi State baseball team was national.
Ole Miss was national champion. Don't run over that.
Okay. I'm
national championship.
saying what Mr. Bill said. It was great, and in some ways we are showing some greatness, in my opinion.
Right, because wherever you go and feel your athletics and feel your academics, you got each one of those schools are producing people just as smart as you said, Harvard and Princeton.
Oh, no. Okay, let me go back there.
I think he's implying that we're not so smart.
We're not. Ole Miss State, Valley, Alcorn, Jackson State. And what it is, though, is the amount of hours those people. What people need to understand now, standardized tests are going away. Which you like that or not?
No.
Do you like that or not?
No.
And I'll tell you, well, why don't you like it?
Well, standardized tests basically give you a chance to compete.
Why don't you like it?
Well, you got to have some gateways, and you got to establish some criteria. You have to do certain things to be able to get into certain universities. And the reason that our kids don't go to Stanford, it's not because they're not smart enough in many cases, but it's the tuition. And, you got to have a 38 or a 40 on the ACT to probably get into Stanford. And so,
have they raised that? I'm not trying to be
so
rude.
I'm just saying it's extremely high.
Yeah.
Well, what about those at USC that went to jail for buying test scores and grades?
That happens all over America. Some of the best lawyers that didn't graduate from law school, even though they were there 8-9 years.
I think that was a shot, but I graduated, baby boy.
Okay.
I mean, use me for an example. I made a 30 on the ACT. Okay,
that's good.
But my family, my dad went to Delta State at night, took one course a year for 12 years to get his business degree, and he just worked. My mom never graduated college. And what I learned is when I was going on, they just wanted me to go to school. They wanted me to go to Delta State. And I was like, no, I'm not going to Cleveland. But what you learn is the people who made it 36 to 35, they're usually teachers' kids, and they've been taking standardized tests, practice since ninth grade. So when I was out there working, or when I was out there working on my jump shot or whatever, they're in there working on their vocabulary tests.
Yes.
And I'm not being critical of them, but they're Kenny Stokes. One of my criticisms of Kenny Stokes is that when he was screaming, and look, Kenny's a politician, and let's keep your prayers. I hear Judge Stokes, Cooper Stokes is doing wonderful. Let's everybody keep their thought and prayers about her. But when he was telling people to throw rocks at the Rankin County Police Department, his kids were at the kitchen table studying. That's why I think you have 2 lawyers and a doctor, or 2 doctors and a lawyer. It's the expectations. It is, this is what we're going to accept. And the problem I have with standardized tests is the poor, white, black, whatever, are not sophisticated enough to know, oh, you got to start taking it now in 9th grade. So when you get up to college, now, freshman year, you got to start taking that MCAT for medical school, that LSAT for law school, that GMAT. So you and I go in, oh, we're nervous. It's our first time. We haven't seen the format. Preston over here is taking 72 of them.
Yeah.
And that's where the economics comes into, and that's where you need to have, I didn't even know this existed. And that's what I'm saying, getting the room, and you get in the room with the best. The Lakers train differently. The LA Lakers train differently than Ole Miss State or anybody else.
Sure.
And I mean, the issue I have with Deion, and I'll come back to you guys, I think Deion showed what could be done at Jackson State, but he also showed, I have never seen white or black or any race where someone sacrificed self-success for the greater good.
Mm-hmm. Well, I see it all the time in our community. My grandmother's, sacrificed tremendously, and so that her grandchildren could have an opportunity to do things that she couldn't do. So we see it in our community all the time. But I get your point. But I want to ask you about...
You mean the community I'm living in right now, Jackson, Mississippi. That community. You just said that. That came out of your mouth. The city of Jackson has all this sacrifice. And that's why Prime went to Colorado.
Well, Prime absolutely disappointed me when he left. He came here with a vision. He made the vision plain. We all saw it, and then he abandoned us.
You saw, Mr. Bill. Most white people would have let him get away with that, but not this redneck from Greenville.
So tell me about the coach that you just hired up there that was just fired out in Texas somewhere for
Chris Beard,
for domestic violence, etc. And the next month he was at Ole Miss.
It was 3 months, but
3 months later, he's the head coach at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
How can you do that? How can we say that we're going to hire someone that was just let go for domestic violence in Texas 3 months ago, and now he's the new head coach at Ole Miss? And at the same time, we ruined Mike Vick's career because he was fighting some pit bulls and just destroyed.
You're okay with killing dogs. You're okay with killing dogs.
I'm not okay.
You're okay with killing dogs.
I'm not okay with you whipping your girlfrill either.
I'm not saying that either. Okay. That was happening in Texas, but do you know what he's talking about, Mr. Bill? We hired Chris Beard. Mm-hmm. No, I'll go ahead and tell you, money talks. Money talks.
Oh, we're principles. What are the principles?
Money talks. That's the principle we live by in America. Money talks. You know what? You know why poor people never get bailed out? Because let me go ahead and say this: the same principles for poor people or for small businesses. Now, let me say the one exception right now. I've got to call it out, so I'm not a hypocrite. City of Jackson's water is getting bailed out by the federal government. And I'm a citizen of the city of Jackson. I'm glad for that bailout. Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is the too many citizens that have a bad time doing the inflation or have a bad, they're told, well, the reason we have to help Amazon is they're a job producer, they're a job creator. You're not a job creator. Oh, okay, so that allows them to be mismanaged. And Amazon hasn't anything like that. But to be fair, but tech companies are laying people off left and right. And we haven't even talked about AI. But back to your question, what concerns me about Chris Beard, the allegations was him and his wife called the police in Texas. And let's be honest, this is what rang to me as a prosecutor. How many times did them Texas police come out to your house before they arrested you? Because I know, and I won't say his name because we're cool right now, there was a couple public officials in the city of Jackson area that were escorted home after drinking a little bit 3-4 times. They said, get in the car. And the 4th or 5th time we wanted to fight him, he or she, they said, we're arresting this piece of garbage.
Oh, who are you talking about?
Nobody specific. But what I'm saying is, how many times do they come to the
I believe I know who you're talking
You
about.
might know him, her, him, her, but he wanted to fight, or she wanted to fight JPD, and they said, we're arresting this idiot. So what I'm saying is, if they reported the arrest, they had been out there 3 or 4 times. 2, at the press conference, you didn't see her. And as a prosecutor, that's a big red flag. Because I want to see them, because the controlling abuser isolates a woman, keeps her at home. So when he came out and said, me and the wife or the fiance have decided that we will not talk about the details. Oh, you decided. ain't no.
He probably whipped that head again. That's why they decided.
Exactly.
But then you hire him at Ole Miss.
Yes. Money talks. Nick Saban's not a nice person.
No.
Oh, I don't know. He does a wonderful job at Aflac commercials, and as far as I know.
Hang on. Do you think Deion Sanders is do you think he's a successful coach, or do you think he's a nice person?
I think he's both.
No.
I think he's both. I think the fact of the way that he stands up for his family. I know he's divorced.
Of late.
Number 3.
He shepherds his children and keeps them with him, and I think that in the way that he inspires young folk to excel, to give it everything that they got, I think he's a great coach and a great person.
And what I'm saying is, take Lane Kiffin, who's an Ole Miss football coach. There was a rumor that came out that he signed a 10-year agreement at Auburn because Ole Miss can only offer him 4 years. Ain't no doubt in my mind he agreed to that. Because, I mean, one, they know the deal. They know no one's going to promote Deion, Lane Kiffin, Chris Beard on graduation rate. You're not keeping your job because your player said, you know what, he asked me about mama every day. You're 5 and 25. You suck.
And that's the truth, because the black schools that are hiring coaches that graduate them losing attendance.
Totally. And that's what I'm saying. No one wants to sit. The basketball coach we fired, Kermit Davis. Everyone talks about what a gentleman is. He went 0 in the SEC. It's like, gotta go. They're paid assassins. So I'm not going to take a python to bed with me, and when I wake up and it's around my throat, wonder what the hell it is. That's why I get along with Socrates so well. I know what a snake is.
No one is going to pay $50, $100 to go see a smart student take a test.
Ain't no doubt.
No,
Ain't no doubt.
they won't.
Okay.
No, they won't. But I think that coaches have a greater role than just winning. I think that they have a greater role to mold these children, to work with them and to make them better people, and to let them understand that it's not all about sports. It's all about going into manhood and being a great citizen.
That's good.
I mean, they have some responsibility.
That responsibility is preparing them for the next level of their trade.
You don't know this, but hang on, Mr. Bill. We got 2 minutes. We're going to end on this. You were a prominent high school baseball player, correct?
Baseball and basketball.
What? Tell us of your journey. You were being recruited, and you were talking about being drafted, right? Then what happened?
Well, basically, my mother told me, you're going to finish school.
But was there not an injury or something in there, or there was something?
Okay, I went to camp both. In minor league, I developed arm problems in the Munich League in New York, and I got cut in basketball. And
when you quit being the rising star, and now you were just a guy back with an injury, how did the faculty, the academics, how did people treat you? Was it different?
No, well, I graduated on time. Matter of fact, I graduated.
That's not what I asked.
Oh.
Was it different?
Oh, yeah, it is different. It was different.
Stars get treated differently. Celebrities get treated differently.
And you just said that. Whether we do not applaud the 3-5. Well, let's take women's basketball. Women's basketball, while Ole Miss beat Stanford, I looked in the stands. They weren't full. They're full for the men. And it's the same thing about everybody else. Oh, and we can get into deeper. The men's athletes, the ones on TikTok, and because you're getting into this, and look, we got to give a shout out to your producer, Ariel. If you need any campaign or commercials, call Ariel. We believe she's doing a tremendous job. But the men are the athletes. The men who behind the scenes, what are they thinking? How's it like getting ready for that game?
Well,
you know who the popular women athletes are? The hot ones who suck at sports.
we got a double standard. You guys hire the guy that whips his wife and breaks him head coach at Ole Miss, and then you suspend the boy at the Grizzlies, Morantz, for 8 games.
Okay, I don't know who you think that owes, but Ole Miss really didn't have a say in that.
He did a video. He had a gun in his hand and he was dancing at a nightclub. And so
you mean breaking the law in Colorado?
Well, I just saw the video. I didn't see where he broke.
Okay, let me ask you this. We're ending time, but since you brought it up, Mr. Bill, what would you have done if it was you or the dude's making $200 million. He stands to lose $40 million. What would you have done if that was your son on the TV or internet with a gun dancing at a strip club?
Man, no. I couldn't bear the thought.
My dad would have beat my ass if I was that dumb.
Not if he told you he was going to cut you off on your allowance.
My dad would have beat my ass if I don't care how much money I
don't think he should be suspended for what he did. I think that is a standard. We got these double standards.
So I can come to work at Socrates Garrett, do cocaine in here, bring some strippers in, and you're good with that if it costs you money?
No, you can't do that.
Okay.
You can't do that. But you can't also become head coach at Ole Miss in beating your wife and your girlfriend. So you just can't do those things.
You literally can.
I see. You
can also become the president of Jackson State.
Well, you just fired him, and I don't know why.
Allegedly, there's a lawsuit coming out that's going to explain all that.
I have no earthly idea why the president.
And we're running out of time. Go ahead, Mr. Bill. Last word.
Last word. Vote for Malcolm on
August 8th. For what?
District 5 supervisor.
That's a nice last word. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back next week.